The Sportscast, May 10th, 2021 AD. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, YouTube, Twitter, and Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening on Apple Podcast, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. And we're also on online digital radio. You can listen to that on our website, thesportscast.net, or you could get our app, The Sportscast for iOS. Check out our apps on our websites. It's all there. The links, favorite podcast. If you want to go to Pandora to listen to it, or iHeartRadio, or if you're a Spotify, which, by the way, they have a great app. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast app this past weekend. It's just like the layout UI. It's excellent. Of course, you got to do that to compete against Apple Podcast. Anyways, sports is very competing as well. Boxing is probably one of the most competitive sport out there. Join us all the way from the UK, Sean from the BTR podcast. Welcome back to the Sportscast.
Oh, Santiago, it's been a long time, and I'm really happy to be back on, really happy to be speaking to you. There's been a lot that's gone on since the last time we've spoke about boxing. I think the last time we had a chat, it was talking about Mike Tyson potentially fighting Evander Holyfield, and obviously he did eventually get in the ring, of course, against Roy Jones Jr., and obviously there's talk of more of these exhibition-style bouts, but obviously you've brought me on today to talk about a particular fight that happened over the weekend, Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders.
Yes, and before we get to that, whatever happened to the Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield fight?
I don't know. It was so there was about 4 different fights lined up. So first of all, it was Tyson Holyfield 3. Then it turned to Tyson Roy Jones Jr. Now they're saying it's going to be Tyson versus Lennox Lewis, of all people. Now, Lennox Lewis has said in the past he'll never get out of bed again out of his pajamas for at least, I think it was 100 million. It was quoted in national newspapers in the UK. He'll never get out of bed again for it. But you just never know the sort of money these broadcasters are chucking at these aging legendary fighters now. They're going to take it, aren't they? Of course they are. For what, an 8-round, 10-round exhibition where there's probably so many stipulations in it where they don't have to literally knock each other out and they can just literally have a glorified sparring session and get paid absolutely a hell of a lot of money for it, wouldn't you?
It would be a retirement check times 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Sean, tell us the whole lockdown situation up in the UK. Are things a little bit better or pretty much the same if it was a year ago?
No, it's starting to ease off now. Next Monday, there's going to be some more national restrictions being reduced. So there's going to be more things opening in the UK. Retail outlets, you're going to be able to go and sit inside a restaurant and have a meal now. And just a few small things that are going to be changed. It's the 21st of June is the date in the UK where they're saying everything's going to be as back to normal as possible. But if I'm being honest with you, I don't know if we'll ever get back to some type of what we knew as normal before. I think there'll be a lot of things that'll change. Businesses will work in different ways because a lot of businesses have been successful at people like myself working from home during the whole pandemic. It suited me personally down to the ground. So I wouldn't want to go back to the office because I've saved that much money in fuel getting to and from work. It's great. So it's better. It's getting better. People are having the vaccinations, and I'm hoping by the summertime, we can all sort of enjoy each other's company once more. But I'm jealous that you guys are getting that much more freedom and things seem to be handled a little bit better than what they've been handled over here.
Yeah, especially here in Florida. We've been a little bit freer for the past 8 to 10 months, so it's been very great, very grateful of the things here. But hey, how much do you miss your favorite pub?
I'm gonna spoil that question now because I'm gonna tell you that I actually don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking a long time ago. But I'll tell you what I do miss. I do miss going into like normal shops. I like collecting memorabilia, boxing memorabilia, other types of memorabilia, music, things like that. And I just like the ability to go back to do that again and just sort of browse around and do them normal things again, and obviously being normal. It's just being able to do the things that people take for granted. And I think that's one thing this whole pandemic has taught me personally and my family, is that you just got to appreciate what you've got, because there's a lot of people that have died unfortunately as a result of it. So it's I think it's taught a lot of people a lot of things. This, and I'm just fortunate that we're all healthy and happy here in my house and the people around me. So it's going to be good once things open up and we can get some normality. And I tell you, most importantly, it's going to be good when I can actually go to a live boxing show again. That's been something I've not been to for about 18 months as a result of the restrictions and shows being cancelled left, right, and centre. So to be able to actually go to a show again will be a blessing.
Yeah, that's something that we've been having a lot. The matches recently with one of them being Canelo, and we had a few UFC fights with full packed houses. One was a couple of weeks ago in Jacksonville, so that was a packed house. My barber went, and he definitely had a great time. Tom Brady was there, everyone maskless, so it's quite interesting times we're living in. And I am the same way as you. I don't drink, so we could definitely hit up a coffee bar in Manchester if you certainly please. So, anyways, news of the weekend. Boxing full swing, of course. Canelo defeated Billy Joel, eight rounds. Sean, give us a recap of what happened.
So it was an interesting fight. I think Billy Joe Saunders came with an undefeated record. He's a two-time world champion. He was no slouch. He was going to come there and he was going to give Canelo a fight. And to be honest with you, I felt that's what he did for a certain amount of rounds. I felt it was competitive in rounds. But then when I look back on it now, I kind of feel like maybe Canelo was just planning what he did to Billy Joe Saunders all along. I mean, you can't predict, obviously, when injuries occur, of course, but that's the sport. That's the nature of the beast. But I felt like Canelo was able to step up levels as he went through the rounds, and you could see that the shots that he was landing were a great selection of shots. The way he was working the body, the way he was throwing them uppercuts in particular were quite beautiful to watch, to be honest. And it's people have this perception that as a UK fight fan, you've always got to support your UK countrymen, and I don't think that's always the case. I think when you appreciate a fighter, a boxer like Canelo Alvarez, you've got to appreciate the artistry of what he can do and the way he can just seemingly step up in levels when he needs to. And when he got to sort of the 6th, 7th round, it was quite competitive, but then you could see Canelo was starting to land some hurtful shots. And although Billy Joe was sort of shaking it off, shaking his head, doing the bravado thing of saying that I'm not hurt, you could see it was getting through to him. And then when he landed that one particular punch on Billy Joe's eye, which has obviously fractured his orbital bone in 4 places, that was the beginning of the end. Of course, that was the beginning of the end of the fight. And the biggest the biggest news about that fight is obviously what happened at the end of it, which was the fact that Billy Joe's cornerman, Mark Tibbs, a well-renowned, well-respected UK trainer, made the decision to pull him out of the fight, although people are completely going hell for leather on Billy Joe, saying that he's a quitter. And Billy Joe, for anybody that doesn't know, Billy Joe in the UK is a character. He's a Marmite character. You either love the guy or you hate the guy. Some of his antics outside of the ring are very questionable and make you think that maybe he's not a very nice human being. But then I've seen some where I think to myself, is it all just for show with him? He's getting absolutely slandered. Even the ring, I don't know if anybody's seen that. Even the ring, the Bible of boxing, sent a tweet out which they retracted quite hastily, and it said Billy No Heart Saunders, and that was it on Twitter. And then the next day, somebody, whoever runs the Twitter account, said we apologise for putting that out there, and somebody who helps with the social media must have done it, thinking it was their own account. Now, it did actually make me laugh because The Ring is one of the most respected magazines out there, if not the Bible of boxing, of course, as they name themselves. And for them to put something else out like that was actually quite funny. And I think the biggest thing I think we should talk about really, Santiago, is like boxers and quitting, because that seems to be the takeaway. And it's sad that that's the takeaway from the fight, because Canelo put on one hell of a performance yet again. But yet everybody's talking about Billy Joe Saunders and the fact that they think he quit. I mean, what's your opinion of that? What's your opinion of not just Billy Joe Saunders, but like fighters in general when, they get an injury like that, they sustain some sort of potential life-changing injury, and they make the decision to either turn the back and walk to the corner and say that's it, or they quit on the stool, essentially. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it really depends on the severity of the injury. Obviously, there are fighters out there that does play injured. fight injured. I don't know if it really depends on the trainer as well. But it depends. Like, okay, if you have a broken arm or if you have like a broken rib, well, not even that, like something that's really severe. Okay, maybe I should, but should it be left up to the boxer, or do you think the trainer saw something different?
The trainer pulled him out. The trainer made the decision to pull Billy Joe out. I think he made the right decision. Obviously, with what was reported afterwards about him having the orbital bone sort of fracture around here in about 4 different places, if he would have carried on taking any of them shots from Canelo, he probably would have lost an eye. That's the right thing to do. If I was in the corner, I'd probably pull my fighter out as well. I'd probably say, I'm sorry, but, for the sake of your livelihood, your health, I'm going to take you out of this fight. And you've got to notice as well at the end of the fight, there was no objections from Billy Joe Saunders. He knew when he got that shot, when he received that shot from Canelo, that was bad. That was obviously a bad injury, because he would have protested. Any fighter would have protested if they wanted to carry on. Surely they would have been protesting about it, and he didn't protest once. So it was quite obvious that he was really hurt, because he's never ever done that in a 30-fight career, and even his amateur career as well here in the UK that not many people over there in the US know about. He had a really well respected amateur career as well, and he's never done that once. So why would he start doing it now? It doesn't make sense to do it. So his trainer making that decision is the right thing. His trainer did actually go on to a UK media boxing channel, Boxing Social, and he actually got interviewed by one of their guys, and he said to them it was me that pulled him out. So fair play to him for making that decision, and it was the right one in hindsight. But Canelo, man, let's talk about him. Let's not focus on Billy Joe Saunders. Canelo, he's like, I voted him as my pound-for-pound best fighter of the past 10 years from 2010 to 2020. And this is the reason why. Because he's just, everybody that they put in front of him, he finds a way to beat him. No matter how bigger they are than him, he just finds a way to break him down systematically and just beat him. And it's like, I don't think people really appreciate him as a fighter. I don't think anyone... Well, I think people in the UK don't appreciate him as much as maybe what people over in the US do, but he's one hell of a fighter, and I think when he's gone and he's finished from the sport, that's when I think people will really, truly appreciate him as a Mexican legend and as a boxing legend. And I think if he carries on the way he is, he's definitely going to surpass all the greats of Mexico. Julio Cesar Chavez, probably, for me, the best Mexican boxer of all time. Canelo's going to surpass him by far. He's definitely going to surpass him. He's only, 30 years old? He said he's got 7 years left in the game. What can he do in them 7 years? He's probably going to be in his prime for the next 4 or 5, possibly. So, he could move up. He could unify the super middleweight division against Caleb Plant. He could move back down to middleweight, fight Golovkin again for a 3rd fight. Or he could even go back to light heavyweight once more and fight maybe Dmitry Bivol or Artur Beterbiev, and there's loads of fights out there for him, and that's all I want to see, to be honest with you, from Canelo now. I just want to see them fights, because he's just an amazing fighter. I really do enjoy watching him.
Do you think Canelo and Billy Joel will go at it again soon?
No, I think that was, from Billy Joel's perspective, I'd say that was his one chance. That was his chance to create his own legacy, and it's sad, but I don't think I'll be surprised if he gets in the ring again after that injury, to be honest with you. It's not just like a small fracture in his orbital bone. I think it's about 4 different places. And I know like Kell Brook got it against Golovkin, another UK fighter, and it happened again against Errol Spence. And Kell Brook's never, ever been the same since. And he's not fought for a while either. And again, I'm surprised he still wants to get back in the ring. But that's a nasty break that Billy Joe Saunders has suffered. So I'll be surprised if he does get in the ring. Even if he does, there's only probably one more fight out there that I think the UK fight fans would want to see, and that'd be Chris Eubank Jr. Them 2 fought once before. Billy Joe Saunders beat him very closely on points. I think that'd be the only other fight I'd want to see now for Billy Joe, if he can get back in the ring again.
Yeah, these injuries could definitely drag you on, but hopefully the best for Billy Joel. So 30-year-old Alvarez, sports rating pound for pound king, led in all 3 scored cards at the time of the stoppage by the scores of 74 to 74 and 77 to 75. He also outlanded the 31-year-old Saunders by a margin of 73 to 60 per CompuBox, including landing 50% of his power shots. So Canelo marches on. I do agree, one of the greatest Mexican fighters in recent time, maybe of all time, but we'll see. Only history can tell. Sean, you have a special series going on in your podcast network. It's a little bit on like the behind scenes of boxing, darker side of boxing, which is what it's called. Tell us a little bit about that series.
Yeah, this is a series which delves into the true crime aspects of the sport, and a lot of the stories that we tell happen outside of the ring. There's one particular story, James Butler Jr., where he literally punches his opponent, Richard Grant, after the fight, barefisted in the ring after the fight's happened. But most of the stories are outside of the ring, and it's something that myself and Johnston, my co-host for the show, we sat there and thought about what things could we do for our podcast, and we were doing our Legendary Nights series and our Career Profile series, and in doing the research for some of them episodes, you found that a lot of these fighters that we were covering had so many hard times growing up. They'd come from really impoverished backgrounds, and it was like, there's definitely stories out here that we'd like to tell, and both of us are fans of true crime in general. So, we wanted to put these two together, and boxing's got so many stories like that. And the ones that maybe are most notable for people are like the death of Arturo Gatti, the suspicious death of Arturo Gatti, Charles Sonny Liston, of course. Again, that was a mysterious death as well. Carlos Monzon, Edwin Valero, Tony Ayala. Even Don King features as part of the darker side of boxing, and Don King's still with us, even into his late age that he is. He's still with us, but yet he's had some shady dealings over the years. And our job for that series has been to bring all this to light, set some context to who these people were outside of the ring, and kind of put a picture there as to what happened and how it happened, how things in their lives led up to that one pinnacle point, which has caused these incidents to happen, these deaths to happen, these rapes to happen. It's really, really gritty stuff, but a lot of people do like it. A lot of people enjoy that aspect of knowing about what really happened behind the scenes. And for us, it's been a challenge, because you've got to try and really dig deep into the archives of what articles are available, what books are available. It's difficult to be able to get contact with some of the people that are around that have been involved in this, because they don't want to talk about it, and understandably so, some of the cases. So we had a lot of challenges putting it together, but we was able to source enough information from different places, including a lot of places in the USA, that were able to give us that information, that we were able to put these really good stories together and really give people two sides of a story, and letting people make their own opinion about what they think about these individuals. So, you talk about people like Don King. All we were doing with Don King was putting out there factual information about things that had happened over the years, about things that he'd been in court for, things that he'd gone to prison for. There was a murder early on in his life that he committed, and there's so many things about so many different people that it's all factual. So what we do, we put it together, we make it as factual as possible, and we let people make their own opinions on it. Because I was asked a question, yesterday on another podcast, similar to what we've been discussing about, do you worry about your safety? And I was like, well, not really, no, because we're not out there trying to dig up some old wounds for people, really. What we're trying to do is to put a story together of things that people maybe know about a little bit about, or maybe they want to know a little bit more information about. And all we feel like we're doing is putting these stories together and giving people the opportunity to make their own mind up as to what they think either happened or what they think about that individual. It's not for us to put an influence on people's judgments about these people. We're just presenting the facts and letting these people make their minds up about the show.
Which story really impacted you, or something that you really did not know but was really eye-catching?
I've said it a few times, but there's two stories in particular that we've covered for the first season. The one that was probably most compelling to me, the one that kind of made me cringe a little bit in doing the research for it, and even delivering the episode, even recording it, delivering it, at times were quite difficult, because it was really gritty, and it was the story of Tony Ayala. And if anybody doesn't know what happened with Tony Ayala out the ring, I won't spoil it too much for you, but he committed some heinous acts outside of the ring, which led to him going to prison. And going through the literal detail of what actually happened was quite difficult, to be honest with you, because then you start to picture like maybe people as individuals, friends, family, and you think to yourself, God, that could happen to any one individual at any one time, and yet this person, as in Tony, committed these crimes, and it can be quite hard to deliver it, to be honest with you, because you got to remember these are all human beings at the end of the day, whether they're here on the planet or not. They've still got family that are around, so we're trying to put this out there, like these stories out there for people to, like I said, make their own minds up. But Tony Ayala's story, that was the first one that was quite difficult. The second one, which I think we did enjoy, but was sad, but then I think was also quite enlightening, was the story of James Butler Jr. and the Kellerman brothers, Max and his younger brother Sam. Now, his younger brother Sam was murdered by James Butler Jr. and the story surrounding how everything led up to that particular point where the murder was committed, it's really sad because people like Sam Kellerman should still be here, and if he was around now, he would be with his brother, and there would be an absolute force in boxing media. Everybody knows Max Kellerman in boxing media. He's one of the great pundits out there. His brother was better than he was. By all accounts, his brother was better than Max. So if Sam was still around, we would have been able to see someone even greater in the boxing media. And it's really sad that he wasn't able to live his life. And that was the other one that we did enjoy, because we felt like we did a lot of justice for Sam more than anybody. Even though the story was about James Butler Jr. and the acts he committed, telling Sam's story at the same time was quite humbling and quite enlightening for us, because we didn't know Sam personally, but to be able to get that much information from all accounts of people that did know him was great for us, because we was like, this guy was such a great guy, and we didn't even know the guy. So to be able to put a good spin on it was kind of good as well in a way. So they were the two, the James Butler Jr. episode and the Tony Ayala episode were the two in particular that, if anyone wants to dive straight into this podcast after listening to this show, they'd be the two I'd recommend straight away. And then you've got, like I said, Arturo Gatti, Carlos Monzon. We've got the 10-round assault, Louis Resto and Billy Collins Jr. Ruben Hurricane Carter, of course, that was our season finale. So there's loads of great episodes out there for the first season that you can go and listen to.
And how can people listen to that series?
On every available podcasting app, Apple, Google, Spotify. There's loads of podcasting apps out there, and it is pretty much on every single one. We have got a YouTube channel. We've started uploading them to there. But I suppose it's probably a good time, Santiago, to mention something that I've not mentioned to many people before about the dark side of boxing, is that we're actually in talks at the moment with a US streaming network to turn the podcast into a visual documentary on their network. So we're hoping to get that over the line, which will mean that the content that we've already created will be there, and it will be edited by a proper production team who will basically put a load of visuals on top of it and really good footage that they've already got access to that will literally turn it into a documentary you can watch on the telly. Now, if we can get that over the line, that's where I think things for the dark side of boxing will really transcend. And I've mentioned to a few people, if you've not seen The Dark Side of the Ring on Vice, the program about wrestling, that's one I'd recommend, and that's kind of the one I see us going down. Is like, if we could get something like that together, that would be absolutely amazing. I think everybody would love that, and we're actually in talks, like I say, with the US network at the moment to put something together for that. So all I'll say is watch this space, and if we get this over the line, I'll be back on the show, and I'll be really happy about it, because it will be really something to look forward to.
Absolutely. Once you find out, let me know, and we'll for sure have you back on to talk about it. But I'm not surprised that you're getting talks with the sports network, because I know you guys do a fantastic job with the research. It's probably a lot of stuff you had to dig through. If there is going to be next season, can you reveal what other fighters would you cover?
Yeah, we've already had conversations about a few. We haven't put a final list together yet, but Ron Lyle is the first one, which it'll be a slightly different story, because Ron Lyle actually started his life really more so in prison, and it's more of a tale of how his dark side was his early life, and how he was able to turn that around and come out and be the heavyweight that he was during the golden era of heavyweight boxing. We've talked about that one. We've talked about another heavyweight from that era, Oscar Bonavina. That's another story for us to cover. We've had requests for different types of stories of people that have embezzled or people that have come and gone in boxing. So there are plenty of stories out there that we can put together, and I think we'll probably get a few seasons out of it before it kind of comes to a close, because like I said to many people I spoke to about the show, there is only so many stories that we can cover, and there's only so much that we can dig into. And the podcast that I was on yesterday was mentioning about some of the modern day cases, maybe that have only recently happened. One in particular that's recently happened is obviously the Felix Verdejo case, which is absolutely despicable what's happened there. And we couldn't really do something like that now because that's an ongoing investigation and an ongoing case. So it's like if we was to get involved in something like that at this stage, we'd definitely be rattling a few trees, and essentially we might not be timing it just right. So we're kind of trying to pick the cases that I wouldn't say are foregone conclusions. Some of them are still unsolved, but we're trying to pick the cases that are already out there, that the factual information is already out there for us to be able to put a good enough episode out there to the listeners. Because as far as we're concerned, there's no point of trying to put a half-assed case to people about something that's going on when these things could actually change in a matter of a year or two. So we'd rather do something that's been done and dusted and present to people a fully complete story, whether some of them are suspect or not, whether you believe what happened to some of these people or not. That's open to interpretation, but if we can present you with the full facts and full evidence of it, then as a listener, it's down to you to make that decision about what you think happened.
I totally agree. I don't publish stories when it's rumored or anything that's not set in stone. I'd rather just wait until it's official. Even when it's official, at least from a credible journalist, but you got to make sure everything is all stats. But yeah. Darker Side of Boxing. Check it out at Sean's podcast at the BTR podcast, Boxing Podcast, BTR Boxing Podcast. Check it out. You could go on Apple Podcast. Also on YouTube. If you're a YouTube person, check it out. Sean does great work. When I first met him 2 years ago, he started with one podcast. Now he has a whole network of it, slew of shows. He loves boxing, loves the sport, love his dedication, does well, excellence in this sport. Let's cover one topic in boxing before we head on for the show. Logan Paul versus Mayweather. Sean, tell us quickly, what are your thoughts over this matchup?
Oh, well, I think we've had these conversations before, haven't we, about YouTube boxing? I remember on one of the shows we did it, and we talked about like the impact of these YouTubers coming on and obviously being able to get in the ring with certain individuals. Obviously, I've seen the videos of Jake Paul stealing Floyd Mayweather's hat. Mayweather looks like he's, with all due respect, looks like he's been living a bit homeless for quite a while. He didn't look like Floyd Mayweather. He actually looked more like 50 Cent. He's got his hair all grown. He looks a little bit like 50 Cent. He was pulling these faces. People were putting all these captions on social media, and he was like, wow, this is just not the same Floyd Mayweather. Like,
when was his last fight?
His last fight. What was it? Was it the exhibition against the? Was it the Japanese kickboxer on New Year's Day 2 years ago?
Oh,
I think that was it.
I spent some time. Yeah.
I think that was the last time. But again, like how many times have we discussed like the sort of impact of the YouTubers that they have, because they've got a certain demographic, they've captured a certain audience, so their viewers are automatically going to be tuning in to see how their man gets on. Essentially, they might not be boxing fans, but what it does do is, as we've discussed before, is it does bring that audience over to the sport in a way. People don't like it. There's a lot of people that really, really don't like it. They think it's a circus. They think it's staged. They think it's very much choreographed, like it's WWE. In reality, do I think that's the case? I think there's definitely elements of it that are definitely staged. I really do believe that. I believe a lot of it is to make a lot of financial gain for the people involved in it. And people might think I'm being really skeptical about it, but I think it's right. I don't think Floyd Mayweather's getting out of his pajamas to go and fight for the sake of fighting, because again, what has he got to prove? He says he's the best ever. He claims he's the best ever out there, but yet he's coming back in an exhibition bout against a guy who has got millions of subscribers, is always hot pressed to talk about, whether you love him or you hate him. So the way I see it is Floyd's being a shrewd businessman. He's seen an opportunity to get a glorified sparring session with a guy that is naturally a lot bigger than him and get paid really handsomely for it. I mean, again, you can't really knock the business mind of people like this, but in terms of the purist side of the sport, it's not great. It doesn't. I don't think it puts a great light on it. It gives a perception of, this is a bit of a shambles and a bit of a circus, really. And then there's people actually within boxing, like actual former boxers or former trainers or current trainers, that a lot of them seem to think it's a good thing as well. It's quite divided because a lot of them feel like all it's going to do is actually bring more eyes on the sport, which essentially means more people are going to want to go to a boxing gym and train, and maybe that's where they'll find their diamonds in the rough, their future world champions. And that's what the perspective is of a select few former boxers or current boxers, whereas there's a majority of people that are in the sport already that think it's just a farce. And I understand, but for yourself then, Santiago, what are your thoughts on this bout going to happen?
Yes, well, yes, there is a level of entertainment, a little bit of script. Obviously, kind of reminds me of wrestling, World Wrestling Entertainment, a little bit of it. One positive thing you can say is that it'll bring new viewers. I know Logan Paul's are probably a bunch of teenagers to 20-year-olds, so it definitely will bring in new eyeballs to the sport. Mayweather kind of surprised he's doing it, but I think he's doing it from a business perspective. I actually spoke with Tyler, and he was telling me that Jake Paul would be a better fighter against Mayweather, and I do agree with him because it seems like Jake is a little bit. It just looks more physical to go against Mayweather. One positive thing, Sean, is that Logan says after this fight he will retire from boxing.
Yeah, because he'll have made a hell of a lot of money. That's why. He'll have made a hell of a lot of money at trying his hand at something against a fellow YouTuber and now one of the greatest fighters of all time. I mean, fair play to him. From that perspective, fair play to him. As much as I don't like it, you've got to take your hat off to the business mind of these individuals, because let's be honest, if me and you, Santiago, was given the opportunity to fight Floyd Mayweather in the ring for 8 rounds as an exhibition with limited experience, and yet we were going to get paid £10 million for it, or $10 million, would you take that?
No brainer.
I'd take it.
No brainer.
I'd take a licking from Floyd Mayweather. I'd be honoured to share the ring with him and get paid handsomely for doing it. So from a business standpoint, of course, it makes sense, of course. But from a boxing purist standpoint, it's not fantastic. But it's not something I'll tune into either. I'll be honest. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to watch it, because I'm not. It really doesn't interest me in that perspective. It's funny to see. It's funny to see the videos online when you when you see him chasing after each other, and it obviously is very staged. And but I mean, Jake Paul's face didn't look very staged. It looked like he's got a black eye and a couple of marks and adhesions around his sort of nose area. So it looks like Floyd Mayweather did actually land a few punches on him.
And I would say you would probably stay longer in the ring with Mayweather than I would. I think you would probably have a better boxing eye than I do. But anyways, it's all hypotheticals. Before we go, Super League, I know this is a soccer question. You're not into soccer, but I know it was big news in the UK. What was your thoughts over the whole Super League fiasco?
It was funny. It was quite hilarious to watch it play out, to be honest with you, and see all these teams in the UK that had previously agreed to enter into this Super League backtrack so quickly. It was like a matter of 48 hours, I think. We had Manchester City, we had Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspur, Manchester United, and they were all like, actually, I think we've made a really bad call. And I don't know if you've seen the news and you've seen what's been going on with Manchester United, but they were obviously meant to play Liverpool about a week or so ago, and some fans broke in and invaded the pitch and basically staged a protest on the pitch. And it was like, well, that's one way of basically telling the club owners that we don't want you there anymore. And fair play to them for doing that. As long as it's a peaceful protest, I've got no issues with it. But the whole Super League thing was, again, it's like referring back to this Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather fight. It's all about money. It's about taking some of the richest clubs out of different countries and putting them into this Super League and making it all profitable for all these large clubs. And it is the greedy people at the top of the chain that are orchestrating it, unfortunately. And it's sort of the grassroots side of the sport that does get affected by it, because I support a local team. My local team's about 3 divisions down from like the Premier League here in the UK, and I've always supported them. And it's clubs like my club that actually really suffer as a result, because the money windfall doesn't come down the divisions then. So clubs like my club don't see it. We don't see it. We have to survive off literally nothing, and we have to get players that are maybe too old and that have been playing in higher leagues for a long time, but now they want to retire and they just want to still play for a couple of years. Or we get fresh-faced youngsters, and teams like mine are never going to really progress when you've got teams like these big teams that are proposing to go in super leagues and sort of take all the money and the rights with them. It's a shame. It really is a shame. I mean, the idea of it, in principle, sounds fantastic. I mean, imagine all these teams battling it out every week, the best in the world. It's like to be crowned the best team in the world, essentially. But they could do that in a different format without taking all the money with them. They could do it in the form of a knockout tournament. But why does it need to be a Super League? I mean, what was your interpretation of it when you seen it unfolding?
Yeah, the rollout was not that good. I think to turn around in 40 hours was not good at all. I do think that they need, like, maybe the big clubs need to meet halfway with UEFA, maybe having the Champions League with less clubs, perhaps, and they're increasing it to 36 in a year or two. But I think they need to have some type of compromise. And it could have been a bluff, too. The big clubs got some more money after the whole fiasco. But it's not over yet. It feels like there's still a lot of friction between them two. But from the fans, it's just not a good idea. And the fans are a big part, weighs a lot of part of what the clubs do or not do. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it's over. I think they'll definitely resurface this in the near future, but for football, hopefully let's make it the best.
That's it. I just think it's about keeping the fans happy at the end of the day. And I'll go a bit nostalgic on people here, and like I grew up watching soccer, as you call it, in the 1990s. My team were actually one of the founding members of the Premier League. They spent 2 seasons in the Premier League. And I remember growing up as a kid watching them, and all I felt football was all about in that period of time was about the passion. It was all about the passion. It wasn't about the money. And people played for passion. People didn't get paid nowhere near as much as what they get paid now for the sport. And it only feels like the sport is all orchestrated around money now, unfortunately. And it might be just me sounding like an old person, but it's not that. It's like anybody that's come from that era, that's lived through that era, will say the same thing. They'll say football was all about passion. People had pride. You play for your country, you'd sing your national anthem. Now you can hardly see anybody singing the national anthem when the 2 teams line up, and it's like, where's the passion, where's the pride gone? I mean, I know there's a lot of footballers out there that still have it, of course there is, but it's just like, it feels like it's just all about money now, unfortunately. And that's, I'll be honest with you, Santiago, that's what's turned me off the sport a lot, and that's how I obviously, a lot of my focus is in boxing these days, is because it's all about money, and it just ruins smaller football clubs like my own, and they struggle to survive year upon year, and it just turns me off the sport completely. But for the people that love it, fair play to you for sticking by it, and you've just got to keep getting your voices heard and people knowing that you're not happy about stuff like that, because that's the only way it's ever going to be changed.
There you have it. Sean from the UK definitely knows more of the insights of what's going on in sports in the UK, and it's quite incredible the times we're living in. Anyways, anything else before we head into the Twitter poll question of the day?
No, just thank you for obviously having me on. Thank you for everybody for listening to your show as well and checking you out. And keep it up, guys. Keep checking him out. It's a pleasure to always be on the show. Exactly.
Poll question is, Sean, what goes best with shrimp? I don't know if you eat this in the UK, but I'm going to give it a shot. The options are seafood gumbo, shrimp cocktail, shrimp scampi, or fried shrimp.
Oh, that's a hard one, that. If it was me personally speaking, it's got to be fried shrimp.
I agree with you. And fried shrimp is winning at 42%. Then shrimp scampi at 28. Seafood gumbo and cocktail are tied at 14%.
Fried shrimp all the way. That's what I say.
There you go with good, some good shrimp sauce. Sean Bastow, what is the best way to reach you online?
Twitter at Sean BTR Boxing. I am on Facebook. I only use Facebook for literally boxing these days. It's Sean Bastow as well. You can find me on there. The Instagram page, BTR Boxing Podcast. It's pretty much BTR Boxing Podcast across all social media. Dark Side of Boxing, please, guys, go and check it out. You won't be disappointed, I promise you.
Dark Side of Boxing, interesting. I'm going to take a listen to it all week. Sean has done great work, been a supporter here at the Sportscast, and hopefully we'll have you more on. And you can reach us at thesportscast.net or at the Sportscast1 on Twitter, also on Instagram, the Sportscast1, on Twitch at the Sportscast1 as well. This week, NFL schedule is going to be released on Wednesday, so we'll be talking about it all week here on the Sportscast. Anyway, Sean Bastow, I love having you here. Hate to see you go, but we got to pay some bills. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for listening to the Sportcast. Get following them.